Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you all, and welcome to another Finding Truth podcast. And this is a new installment of our Marvels of Creation. And once again, with Dr. Ahmed Gomaa to tell us about the marvels of creation in the human eye. This time, he's going to tell us how we see in 3D. Right, Dr. Ahmed?
Exactly, Ahmed. Thank you very much for the introduction again, and let's see how we can 3D as you just mentioned now.
So I'm very excited to see what you're going to show us today. And for those who have not seen the previous two installments, you can still watch this one without seeing the previous two, and then you can see them later. So this is the third one. And the first one, we understood the anatomy of the eye. In the second one, we understood how it functions. And today, after this marvelous presentation of how the eye functions, today we are going to focus on how the eye actually delivers 3D vision. So without further ado, let's go for it. And here is the presentation, Dr. Ahmed. And go ahead.
So today, as you just mentioned, Ahmed, we inshallah we are going to look into the eye now. Through the last two episodes that we had, the first one, as you mentioned, we were looking into how the eye is created, how it is formed to perform the function it is created for. In the second episode, we looked into the structure of the eye and how we can get the image out of this eye in a way that it gives us the optimum quality of vision using the eye as an optical device. Today, we are looking into the eye as a visual system, using the two eyes together for us to navigate through the world in 3D. So if we move to the next slide, Ahmed, please. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Here is the challenge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving all of us. الذي خلق سبع سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فأرجع البصر هل ترى من فطور ثم أرجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير. So Allah is challenging all of us, saying He is the one who has created seven heavens, one above the other. You can see no imperfection in the creation of the all-merciful look. Again, can you see any rifts? Then the question, then look again, and yet again, your sight will return to you exhausted and dimmed to practice with fatigue or disappointed, actually. So the challenge here is a very unique challenge, and the question that for all of us, that it is heavens, it is not one layer, it is seven layers, one above the other. So it is not a single like dimension universe, it is different dimensions in all aspects. And just go ahead and see it and try to find the small rift, small imperfection in this. And not only once, try again and try again. And every time you try, it will come back to you completely fatigued and dimmed and disappointed that you didn't achieve your way of a challenge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So next slide, please. So here what we need to look into the world in three dimensions. We need elements for that. First of all, we need an optical image, and then we need a motor system to move this optical image. This motor system will do certain functions. One of them is to track the object and then fixate on the object. You want to, once you fixate on the object, you want to maintain that. And at the end of this process, you would like to see things in 3D. You can appreciate the depth. You can go through the world knowing that it's not like two-dimensional thing. You can navigate through it and you walk through it safely and you achieve your target in the universe. So next, please, Ahmed. In the last two episodes, we spoke about the optical system, the marvelous creation of the optical system, the eye. And we can see here, as we discussed before, the beauty of the creation and the eye as a very unique optical system. And this unique optical system is created in a way to look into this beautiful universe around you. This image here is just to give you an idea that we use this very small, unique, beautiful organ to look into this huge universe. This huge universe is not like a small room where you are staying. It is the whole world around you, starting from where you live up to the whole universe. You can look into the skies, you can look into the mountains, you can go and walk by the lakes and the beach, and you can tell that this unique optical system will give you the option to look into that. So next slide, please. Now, binocular vision is means binocular. The word means that we use both eyes. It's not the word binocular. And if someone is interested in watching birds or going into the nature, look at things, he will be using binocular. Binocular by word means we are using both eyes, and this is the word came from. If you look at this funny cartoon here, I don't think we are looking into the world in such way. It will be a problem if we are doing that. If we look into the world around us and we see it that way, I think we all will be in trouble by doing that.
Yeah. You have two holes, one hole for each eye. It will look really funny.
Two holes, and then you have to try to find a way to put the two together. Yeah, it is a moving world. Still, you can see, but is that a perfect vision for you? I don't think anybody will be satisfied with that.
No, very problematic. Yeah,
exactly. So if we go back to the anatomy of the eye, of the eye, this is the way we are looking to the eye within the bony part of the eye, with it, what we call it the orbit, and we are looking from above. So we are cutting through the skull, and we see a cut section through the two eyes together from above. This is actually an MRI scan. Some of us will be starting to know about what's happening with the scans, but this is a type of a scan that we can look into the eye. And this is cutting through it in order to show you how the eye lies within the orbit. And the orbit, by saying orbit, it is a bony socket. And this bony socket, like two V-shaped, as you can see, spaces, it is exactly like a four-wall pyramid or a cone within the skull, each on each side. If you look into the central part of it, there are two walls. The two walls, what we call it in a medical term, the medial wall, or the inner part of the sockets, you can see clearly it is parallel to each other, right? Now, if you go to the outside, the outer wall, which is to the outside, is actually 45 degrees to the inner wall. So it is tilted to the side, but in the side, it is parallel to each other. So 45 degrees to the center, but the two together forms 90 degrees. So that's how the eye lies within the socket in the skull. And this is very important. And we can actually see now two lines going through the eye. One line is going from the front backward. We call it the axis of the eyeball, or this is actually the optical axis. At the same time, there is another axis which goes through the socket itself, and the two lines are not the same. There is an angle between the two. So the eye lies within a socket, but it is not in parallel with the line of the actual socket. Now, at the back of the eye, there is a nerve, and the nerve carries all the signals from the eye to the brain. This nerve lies in the line with the axis of the socket, but the visual axis is not in line with this line, because actually the optic nerve, or the nerve which takes the signal out of the eye, is a blind spot. So the eye lies in a way that your optical axis, despite being within a socket, your line goes to the most sensitive part without going to the blind point. Did I get the point? So now again, so the oblique line.
You mean that the blind spot is actually on the axis of the orbit?
Exactly, and the visual axis is the other axis. So if you imagine that this socket was parallel to each other without this angulation, you will not be able to bring the blind spot outside your visual axis. So this is in a way, now we have the blind spot displaced to the nasal side, to the inner part of the eye, and your eye still lies within the socket with the axis facing straight forward.
Okay, so actually, when I published our previous episode, an atheist sent me a note that how come the eye is beautifully designed while the eye spot is just sitting there, making us unable to see at the most important point. And what you are saying is this is exactly what is not happening,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
due to this tilt, the
Yeah,
design makes
yeah.
that the optic nerve, which the optic nerve is where the blind spot is, right?
Exactly right. Yes, it is in line
So,
with the orbit, not with the visual axis. Yeah.
and actually, I was always wondering. I try to bring the blind spot, but I never see a blind part of my vision. So this is
Yeah.
why.
We
Amazing.
can make you see it. It is as we usually call it in medicine. It
Mm.
is a negative type of scotoma. Negative, you are
Ah,
not aware of it. I can show it to
ah.
you under certain like special circumstances. So I can show you where is your blind spot, but you have to work with me for that. It is negative. You will never be able to see it.
So you will teach me to do a specific movement with my eye until we
Yes, and
focus.
it has to be monocular as well. I have to show it to you.
Wow.
And
To
even
close
when
one
you are
eye.
monocular, most of the time, as we see through the lecture, your eyes has a certain kind of imperfections which keep this blind spot out of your sight all the time, even if you just one eye.
Wow. So even when you close one eye, it's difficult to bring the blind spot in focus to
Exactly.
the extent that it affects you.
Unless you fix something and you start moving objects from everywhere until I show you where is the blind spot. We can find it, but it is has to be like tested, or it is negative. It is not a positive kind of defect.
This is amazing. So essentially, yes, we have a blind spot at the insertion of the optic nerve into the
Yeah,
eyeball, but due to the tilt of the eyes, the axis of vision is actually makes the focus always away from the eye spot. This
exactly.
is what is subhanallah, unbelievable, unbelievable,
The two
subhanallah.
visual axes actually they are exactly at the center, and they are going to the image, as we can see. So we move to the next one. We can
Yeah.
see the here. So this is, as we looked into the previous one, we looked into the eye within the socket in the skull. Now each eye gives you what we call a field of vision. So we
Mm-hmm.
have, as you can see in this picture here, field of vision coming from one eye is the range of the space around you, which you can see without any interference or blockage. This is your actual field of vision. So the field of
Uh-huh.
vision, by definition, is, as they call it, the island of vision within a sea of blindness. In other words, you can see something, and whatever outside it, it is you are blind for. So you are living in a universe. All what you can see is your vision island, but
Mm-hmm.
everything that you cannot see, for you by default will be a blind part. So you are blind to what you cannot see.
Yeah,
Exactly.
amazing.
So
Amazing.
here, each eye has a field of vision. The outer part of the field of vision starts at the periphery here, and each eye goes around 120 to the middle, and it overlaps with the other eye. So we have a central part of our vision where we can see with both eyes together. This is roughly around 140 degrees, and above and below the horizon, it is about 120 degrees. So this is the central part of our vision where both eyes are working together, so overlapping with each other. Now, as we can see in the image here in front of us, the central part is overlapping part between the two eyes, but in each aspect from the outside, there are two crescents. So the crescent to the right is where you only can use your right eye, and crescent to the
Mm.
left, where you can only use your left eye. But the central part, the central island of your vision, is where both eyes working together.
And
And
what are the meaning of the colors? I don't get what the meaning of the colors
the
is.
colors is important because uh, uh, interestingly, our eyes actually, this is what we call in visual field a quadrant. So the
Hmm.
nerve goes out of the eye. It actually, the nerve fibers are not going all the way back to the brain as one fiber or as one whole wire. This wire
Hmm.
splits many times, and it splits in quadrants. So
Ah.
the part to the outer side from
Hmm.
the right eye goes and it kind of splits and goes to the other side, where you the other part from the other eye goes to the opposite side. So it crosses at what we call the chiasm within the brain. So this is anatomical representation of what's happening in the eye. But this is not what we're discussing right now. This was just an image to show what is the central part of the vision and what is the peripheral part of the vision, and which part we are seeing with both eyes together, the central part, which is
so what 114 degrees,
about 140 degrees, and the above and below is about 100 at 120, 50 above and 70 below, so it's about 120.
Okay, the image at the very right says 114, 114.
It is approximately here, yes. But if we overlap the two, I think we can reach up to 120 and 140 even, the central part.
Okay. So what I understand is, as much as we go further to the periphery, the vision will not be as strong, but in the middle we will be focused and we exactly see what's happening.
Kind of. It is not the image here is not about the quality of the vision. It is more about which part of our vision we are using both eyes for it, and which part it is just one eye. In other words, as we started the talk, which part is binocular and which part is monocular. So if you can see the crescent, it says monocular crescent, and the central part is where both eyes working together.
Yes, I get it. So this is the monocular crescent. Here it is, and this is the other one, and this one in the middle is where we can see
part of the vision.
The binocular part. Amazing. All right.
Yeah.
All right. What's the bunny? What is the meaning of the bunny thing? What does the bunny mean?
The bunny thing is the field of vision, because the field of vision for the bunny is different. It is actually the eyes are on the sides.
So the bunny is if
the
we,
animal,
if we the rabbit. So if it's a rabbit. The rabbit. So the area of the overlapping is very small.
But they don't have the binocular vision, because the binocular vision is not a requisite for them. We are living a 3D world, but they need the space, of course, for escaping from their, the animals in there. So in this is a different representation of how big is the visual field.
In the case of the rabbit, it's almost seeing 360 degrees, seeing everything.
360 degrees, exactly.
But it doesn't have the stereo thing.
Exactly.
It has monovision. Okay. Yeah. A trade-off. Great. So, subhanAllah. All right.
So we go to the next slide.
Yeah.
So again, this is just a representation of what we discussed before. We give it in a different image. In the central part, we are using both eyes. And the part to the right, the red one, it is just the right eye. And the other part to the left, it is just the left eye. But in the very central part, this cone that we use for most of our vision is where both eyes meeting. Now, I want you to look at the line to the right. There is a line, and this line we'll come back to it later. It is a line which connects all the points that goes from the so this point here on this line, which we call it in a medical term Horopter, or you can consider it a curve in the space, where any point in the space will fall into the 2 points in the retina. We call it the corresponding retinal points. So for this image to be single, this image has to fall in 2 points in the retina in each side, which is corresponding to each other. In other words, if it falls here and on the other eye falls in the same corresponding point, your brain will interpret this as a single image. So this is important for the eye to see single image in the space. And these points are moving across a line in the space. And this line starts from the periphery, as you can see it, and it goes all the way to the middle. As we go to the periphery, this gets bigger in size. The space that you can see things becomes deeper. And as you go to the center, it becomes narrower, but it becomes more precise.
Okay, so essentially we are really seeing a fuzzy image to the periphery and a precise image, which is the summation of 2 images coming from the 2 eyes in the part in the middle.
Correct. So that if any point gets into this line, it will fall into the corresponding points on the retina, and we will perceive it as a single image.
You are referring to this line that I am moving the
exactly
cursor.
Right, yes. This is a fixation point, yeah.
Okay.
Next
And
slide,
this
please.
needs that the eyes are really spatially in harmony in their movement, so that the points will always fall. I mean, the eyeballs on both eyes needs to move in a coordinated manner all the time, right? Otherwise, the
Exactly.
points will
And
not
that's
fall
what
in
we
the
come
right
to in a
place.
minute now with the
Really?
motor.
Okay. All right. Mhm.
Exactly. So now, as as we started the talk, we said that we will need optical image, and this optical image we discussed in previous episodes. And this time we are looking into the motor system, which moves the two optical systems together. Now, each
Mm,
eye, as we can see the image here, has 6 extraocular muscles attached to it. So there are 6 muscles attached to the eye.
mm,
4 in the what we call cardinal direction. Cardinal direction is it is superior at the upper part, at the lower part, one at the inner part, and one at the outer part. So 4 main muscles. This is the 4 main directions. If you ask any patient, look up, look to your right, look to your left, look down. That's the main directions. Now there are 2 muscles, and the 2
mm,
muscles, by its name, it is the oblique muscles. So one of them is the superior oblique, means it is the upper oblique one, and there is a lower oblique one. So they
mm.
are the 6 extraocular muscles linked to the eye. Uh,
But
the
where are the other two?
so you have here in the middle part, above at the upper part of the globe is the
Mm,
superior one, and
mm,
here you have the lateral one, and
mm,
to this is the medial or the inner one to the nose, toward the nose, and this is the lower one at the bottom of the eye, and this is the superior oblique here,
mm.
and this is the inferior oblique. Okay,
What is the function of the two obliques?
we will see now. We
Ah,
go
okay.
through.
All right. Okay. So let's go and see.
Now, uh, we might be familiar, especially our beloved engineers, about the transmission of movement through the
Yeah.
pulleys and the function of the pulleys, how to transfer the power without changing the direction, and at the same time give you the left power. So in this model here of this small pulley, that we can see that he is dragging here, but actually the lift is happening here. So by doing that, what is happening, that this weight will go up, but I am
Mm,
actually pulling down. If it was just a simple lift, I had to
mm.
be here, and I have to be lifting it from above,
Yes.
which is
Difficult.
not a practical way of everything.
Yeah.
I was when I was preparing that, I was looking into the pulleys and how it started. So they were looking into they were saying they don't know where the pulley started. Of course, we know they used it to get the water out of the wells, and they calling Archimedes maybe. And
Mm,
they were looking who the first scientist or first discovery of a pulley for the human being, and they didn't
mm,
know they were created with a pulley in their eyes. So the pulley were there all the time, and it is even from the date when the human beings were created. It is there, and it is doing exactly the same function of this pulley, creating this traction into the small pulley to redirect the power in a different direction, despite doing the traction from the same point. So the
wow.
eye has different, as you can see, this eyeball is in the socket. We need to move it in all possible directions you can imagine.
Mm,
And I will, the creation is to give you the ability to do that. So the eye front backwards, still we are still in the previous slide. So the
mm,
eye front backwards, there is an axis going through the cornea all the
mm,
way backwards. This
mm,
axis is in the middle of the eye.
mm.
Okay, and this
Yeah.
is we can see it here. This is the y-axis as it
Mhm.
is in the image in front of us.
Yeah.
So this is the anteroposterior. If you imagine you have an eye, a ball, and you have this anteroposterior axis, and this ball starts to move around it, so this
Mm,
will be what we call torsional movement. So it is moving around the axis which is going from the front backwards.
mhm,
And if you have the axis which goes from the above down, the
mm,
eye will move side to side, right? So this
mm.
is the axis where the eye moves side to side. Now
Yeah.
there is another axis which goes from the outer part to the inner part, and this makes the eye go up and down. So we
Yeah.
have six actually different three axes around which the eye will move in the different directions. We have torsional movement, we have elevation, depression, or we call it moving up, moving down. We have moving in, moving out, which in other medical terms we call it adduction or abduction. But let's call it move it in and move it out. So these are the main cardinal directions that the eye moves in. So all possible directions that we need to move in. Now, the next slide. Now, if we look into how precise is the muscles attached to the eyeball, it is done in a certain fashion. Let's start with the most inner part of the eye, which is the medial. We call it the medial muscle. So it is the one next to the nose, and this medial muscle is away from the eye, from the limbus or from the cornea by 5.5 millimeter. If we go down, it will be 6.5. It's 6.9. It's 7.7. So if you connect the line, it will not be a simple circle. Will it be? It is actually a spiral, isn't it? So this is a spiral. Starts closer, and as we go back, it goes into a deeper attachment. So these muscles are not attached exactly at the same point. It's not a simple circle. It is a spiral. Yes. And this French scientist described it. His name is Taillot, a spiral of Taillot. He described this. He's the first one to describe it. Now, if we move to the next slide, that's to show you what is the difference between a spiral in 3D and a simple circle. So let's take the spiral. I just wanted to show you the spiral as a whole, so you can imagine that the start of the spiral, and if you start at this point here, and if you go all the way, you will end up in a position different from this plane. It will be a different plane, isn't it? But if you move across the circle, you are moving exactly in the same plane.
In the same plane,
So even the attachment of the muscles are in a way that when the eye moves across the spiral of Taillot, it doesn't move just in a simple bidirectional way. It moves also into depth. So it's actually the eye moves in a way that it follows this spiral of Taillot with the attachment of it. Now, can we play this video? This will give you just an idea when the eye moves with the muscles around it, and then we will see even a better video to show us how the muscles move in different directions.
Okay, I'm trying to make the video. Just give me a second. For some reason, it doesn't want to. Okay. Actually, for some reason, the video. Just a second. Okay, so I think we can make it work now.
I can't share from my side if this is well.
No, we'll manage it. Just a second. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Very interesting video indeed. So yeah.
So is it playing now?
Yeah, it's playing.
we can see that the eye in the middle image in the video, it can the eye moves in all directions that we know. It goes up, it goes down, it goes to the right, to the left, and in between. And you can grade it. So you can ask yourself, or you ask someone around you. You ask him, okay, look up. He will follow you immediately. Look down, look to the right, look to the left, look up and down, look up to the left, look right. So this all can be achieved very easily with the eye muscles that we have. Each of us has
Wow.
6 of these eye muscles, and the directions, the different directions can happen very smoothly, as we can see here. And the eye can move across all this range very precisely.
Amazing. And this
And
is
the
how
next slide
the
will be
6
even
muscles.
better because it will show each of the muscles how it is playing.
Ah, okay. So we'll see more details about how each of those actually contribute to this
Correct.
multi-directional motion. All right. So let's see. So we saw this one already, and now
Yeah.
this one. Okay. Okay. Shall I play it also?
Yes,
Okay.
please. So here we have the eye within the socket. Now you can see the oblique. This is the
Wow.
superior oblique that you were discussing about, and it was
Yeah.
going through the pulley, the superior pulley of the eye. Now this is the socket. We saw the upper wall of the socket, the lower wall, and that's how the eye within the each socket inside the eye. So the 2 walls, as we discussed, are parallel to each other. The outer walls are 45 degrees to the inner wall, and the muscles go all the way across the wall from the back of the eye. There is a ring, and this ring gives the origin for the muscles. The muscles go all the way forward. This is the optic nerve going from the eye, right? So, and this is how the eye attaches to the muscles. Can you stop the last one, Ahmed? Can we stop the play for a
Sure.
minute? Yeah.
Okay.
So if we go back to the first one, to the here, yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
The first yellow, the one,
Do you want me to stop it at the first yellow?
yes, this is the one. Yeah,
I will
again,
stop it when it reaches. Okay. All right.
yeah.
So this
So
first
this
one.
is
Yeah.
the first muscle, and this is the first muscle, and this is the upper muscle, which move the eye up. Now, if we move to the next
Aha.
muscle, this is what we call the superior rectus.
All right.
And then this is the inner muscle which move the eye in, and as we go down, this is the inferior oblique, and then
Okay.
yes, this is
Mm-hmm.
this is the inferior rectus, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we have the inferior oblique, and now this is what would move the eye out.
Aha.
And now come to the oblique muscles. There is an inferior oblique muscle and superior oblique muscles. And this is a superior oblique or inferior oblique muscle move the eye in a different direction when the eye is not at the primary position. So it is meant in a way because as we will see within the socket itself, if the eye moves to the extreme position, it is not in a position for the actual muscles to work. And we will have a scan now where you give us an idea about how this happens.
Wow. This is this is so amazingly intricate that this oblique thing is unbelievable. So it is actually pulling through a pulley, and the pulley is at the corner of the eye, right?
Correct, exactly. So this
Wow.
is an oblique muscle, comes from the back of the eye, comes from the apex of the top of the pyramid at the back of the eye. And this oblique muscle, if you go back, Ahmed, yes, this is maybe you stop where the oblique is.
Sorry, I will do it. Just a second. This is really unbelievable, Dr. Ahmed.
Here we are. This is the oblique muscle. Yes.
Yeah. Subhanallah. This is totally amazing. And how is this pulley? What is acting
Now
inside?
I want you to imagine. Now let's stop here, Ahmed. So this is the
Sure.
oblique muscle, and this oblique muscle, as you can see, if it pulls the eye through the pulley, then the eye will move across the what we call the anteroposterior axis. It will
To go
intort.
this like
It
yeah.
will intort. Yeah. So it will move in this direction. This is the one of the actions, right? But let's imagine that this whole globe now, the cornea or the front of the eye moves to be in axis with the oblique part of the muscle. So let's say that this cornea moves to be here, correct? So if we move this cornea, the eye goes into the most inner position. Now, in this most inner position, this muscle won't be able to action anymore because it is out of axis of action. But for that to happen, Allah give us another muscle. This muscle will act if the eye moves into the very extreme position. And in this extreme position, this muscle will start to pull that way. So the eye goes down, isn't it? Again, so in this position, we have a muscle to bring the eye down and the eye up. Only when the eye is in axis with the orbit. But let's assume that the eye moves to the extreme position. I want to move my eye, yes, like what you did now, like what you did. Move your eyes toward your nose. Move your eyes toward your nose. No, yes, exactly. To the left. Look to your left. Look to your left and down. Now you can move your eyes in that direction. And despite the fact that you are looking into the extreme gaze, your eyes still moves into that direction because of this muscle here in your right eye. So the cornea moves, the cornea goes into here, and in this axis, this muscle will act as if it is depressing the eye because it pulls that way, the eye moves down. And the same action happening with the inferior muscle. But the inferior oblique starts here. So this is all the muscles coming from the back of the eye, but there is one muscle comes from the front. This muscle is called the inferior oblique. So the inferior oblique starts here, and it goes exactly in the same direction, and it is at the bottom of the eye.
Wow.
So we have 5 muscles which start at the back, and one muscle starts at the front here, at the rim, the bony rim at the bottom here. And these 2 obliques are meant to be moving the eye in.
Dr. Ahmed, I suggest you share the presentation from your side so you can use your own cursor to point.
All right,
because I think a very important part of the explanation is by using the. Thank you, Bess, for suggesting that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. You will need to put the presentation in presentation mode and then share it. Not.
All right. Yes, just a minute. Yeah. Is it working now?
Hi, understanding the actions of the extraocular muscles can be frustratingly confusing.
Ahmed, can you see me now? My presentation?
Yeah, we'll add it now. Okay, here we go.
So this is my screen now, isn't it? So, so we will go to this part of the muscles that we were discussing a minute ago, which is the oblique muscles.
It was actually earlier than this. It was at 123.
Yeah, but this is here. We can go where it is. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So here, going back to what we were discussing about the oblique muscles, the oblique muscle here, this is what we call the superior oblique or the upper oblique. The oblique muscle starts from the back of the eye and at the apex of the most backward part of the orbit, the bony socket. This muscle goes forward to a pulley here. This pulley is formed of cartilage at the bone and front of the eye, and then changes direction to get into the eyeball. Now, if you imagine this muscle starts to contract, the direction of traction will change at the pulley. So this will start forming the traction here, but we are getting it exactly from the same point where we have all our muscles coming. And the traction is still doing the functions that we want, as if we are at the front here. This muscle, if you imagine, starts to now, let's say that the eye in this primary gaze, usually we call primary gaze when we are looking straight forward. That's what we call primary gaze for the eye. Now, at this primary gaze, if this muscle starts to contract, the eyeball will move into torsional movement. So it will go inside. So this will this muscle will contract. The eyeball will move across the front backward axis, and it will move that way. We call it intorsion. Now, let's say that the cornea, which is the front of the eye here, at the very front part of the eye, moves to be here. This position, the muscle now starts to become within axis with the whole eye, because the axis of the eye becomes here now.
Yeah.
So when this happens, the muscle changes its action. If you imagine the eyeball,
To make it move up and down now. It will
exactly
make it...
right. So
wow,
you started now to move the eye up and down when you are at the oblique direction. So you can move the eye up and down when you are inside, which was not possible mechanically unless you have a muscle like that.
Unless we have this oblique one. So
exactly,
a very, 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 very obvious design signature in this muscle system.
Absolutely. So
unbelievable.
Yeah, and these are the different directions. Again, we can see the muscle. We will see it now. This is the there's another thing that we want to see here before we leave it, because it's good to have both eyes at the same time here. Now we have the two globes in front of us, and the two globes, we can see the muscles together, right? Let's say we want to move the eye in this direction here to the right. So this muscle here will contract.
Yeah.
This muscle here will relax.
Relax. Okay.
This muscle here will contract. And this muscle here will relax.
Yeah.
So we have, now we are moving the two optical systems together. And this order has to come from the brain to the different muscles exactly at the same time, with the same degree, at the two optical systems to move exactly in the same direction. You want to move through the eye to the right, this muscle will contract and the opposite muscle will contract. This is not the same muscle, by the way. This is a different muscle. This is what we call the lateral rectus, but in the other eye, it is called the medial rectus. This action is different from this action. This action brings the eye outside. This action brings the eye inside. So they are synergistic effect. So this eye will have this muscle will cause a synergistic effect to this muscle. Now we have law of equal innervation, subhanAllah. So the nerve impulse that comes here and causes contraction of the lateral rectus will have impulse to the other eye to something different, to a different muscle. But the aim is to move the two together in the direction you want. At the same time, another impulse of the nerve comes to the muscle, which stops the muscle, the action, and the opposite one. It will have an inhibition or a stop. You have a stop signal. Don't do anything now. The other muscle will contract. And this all happens simultaneously. Now, this muscles as a whole, if you imagine that the whole length of the muscle, it's about 38 millimeters from the backwards to the front. Is about 4 centimeters. The muscle itself is very thin, as we were discussing. The actual muscle, we are speaking about maybe 5 millimeter or 6 millimeters sometimes. This is the whole width maybe of the muscle from side to side. We're speaking 38 millimeter from front backwards, 4 centimeters by the maximum, plus or minus everything we discussed. These muscles are very, very unique regarding to the other muscles of the body. Now, this eye, it still moves within the socket in different ways. This is the eye within the axis of the upper part, but maybe this is what we call intorsion and extorsion. Now,
Wow.
the eye is in extreme position that we were discussed. The obliques will start to work now. And this is what we called moving up and moving down when the eye is in the oblique position. Let's play it again. So here it moves down, and the other muscle, the other oblique, will move it up in the extreme position.
Wow. And this motion where it did like this is because of the obliques also?
Yes. So the obliques is the cause for moving in the extreme gaze. Now, this muscle here, the extraocular muscle, this is a nice view for the muscles and how it is attached to the globe, and where it is coming from the back of the bony socket, and how it goes all the way forward. There was a very interesting theory that the muscles will follow just the shortest path from the front backwards. So if we go to, let's say, an evolution way of thinking or something like that, you would imagine that the muscle will come from here and it will follow the path to the front, and this will attach to the globe in a way to do the function, and at the same time following the shortest path to the eye. This theory is actually not true, and they proved that it is not the case. I will show you now the next image. As we can see here, this is an MRI scan of the eye in action. Now, this is the eye, as we call it, in abduction, the one to the left here, which means that the eye is moving to the extreme gaze at the outside. And this is completely the opposite, which is adduction, or the eye at extreme inner gaze. And if we look at the inferior rectus at the bottom, you see that the inferior rectus actually in action changes its direction in a way it is not the shortest path. The muscle doesn't follow the track into the single point. It's not like a straight line from the back forward. How come the muscle in action changes its direction like that in an angulation? Because there is another pulleys attached to the eye. It's this time it is not a muscle tissue. It is a kind of tissues around the eye, which causes like a ligament or a tissue connects the muscle to the eye in a way that it serves the function and forms another pulley while it is working. And this is why it is in action.
SubhanAllah.
So that's another thing. The muscle itself is completely different from the extra muscles that we have in other parts of the body. So
you mean the thing that acts like a pulley is what is called here the trochlea or something?
Yes, exactly. You see the trochlea here? This is the trochlea. It is a cartilage ligament, and this cartilage ligament is attached to the bone, and that's where the muscle changes direction and acts as a pulley here. This is what we call the trochlea, and this is for the superior oblique. Now, the extraocular muscle, despite being very small, as we discussed right now, it is a very, very unique muscle. You imagine that any muscle we have in our body has fibers, and these fibers, as a general rule, two types: slow and fast. So there is fast for what we call a twitching action, and there is a slow one for the very low graded fine action, or the slow fibers. But each muscle has in the eye has at least 6 types of fibers. So instead of having only 2 fibers, they have 6 types of fibers. Now, in each muscles outside the body, the innervation is not per single fiber. Maybe 100 and 120 fibers will be innervated by a single fiber.
Innervation means the supply of the nervous signal to the muscle
exactly.
fiber. Yeah?
So for each muscle tissue, or each small fiber, there is a nerve coming in about 90% of the muscle tissue in the eye.
Wow.
So 90% of the fiber has its own innervation. Yes.
So the control is not at the level of the muscle as a whole, but actually at the level of the very fibers, the very constituent fibers of each muscle, so that the motion of the muscle is controlled at the detail level of the muscle, not just you muscle contract or you muscle relax. Maybe the muscle will have differential movements within its own fibers.
Correct. This fiber has its own, each 90% of the fibers will have single innervation. So this means the nerve fibers coming for each single fiber for about 90% of the muscle tissue. And this is happening for each of the muscles.
No, it's unbelievable. So that the
Now,
motion of the fiber is completely
we
accurate.
discussed
Yeah.
slow and twitching fibers. Each of the fibers here can act in a continuum of movement, and this continuum of movement is not like any other muscles else in the body where you can do all or none. This is a bit too deep into how the muscles work, but our muscles work in a something called action potential. It is a simple electricity. If you reach a certain threshold, the muscle fiber starts to contract, then you achieve the contraction, then you stop. So sudden gush of electrolytes into the muscle starts to contract. It is all or none. Whether you reach the threshold and then the muscle contracts, or you don't reach the threshold and the muscle stay relaxed. This is not the eye. The eye muscles acts in a very continuous way that you can grade your actions in relation to the way that you want the eye to be moved and how to the degree that it needs to be moving. So it is a continuum of movement achieved by the type of fibers and the nature of nerves coming to the eye.
Subhanallah.
Despite being very small, as we discussed like that, it is very precise, very metabolically active at the same time, and the nerve fibers itself has at least 6 types of fibers within each muscle. It's not only slow or twitch fibers, it is a very complex muscle. And that's why it helps the eye to move in a very precise continuum of movement. It's not just simply move to the right or move to the left. You can ask, how about if you move slightly to the right, a bit more? I usually, when I'm examining patient in the clinic, sometimes I need to examine the back of the eye, and I ask them to look in a certain direction, and they keep asking them in a very simple way, how about if you look up to the right, slightly more, a little bit less? And they can achieve all this voluntarily without any problem.
Amazing.
So as we mentioned here, this is just a table here which shows the difference between the limb muscles and what we call the extraocular muscles. The time that the muscle reach the peak tension is at least 4 times quicker than the muscles in your body, in your hand, in your leg. Let's say that the milliseconds taken for reaching the peak tension is 12 milliseconds, and the eye it is 4 milliseconds. So it is way less than any other part in the body. So the time needed to achieve the action is much smaller. There is no what we call safety measure within the eye. So the eye is more vulnerable to having a very quick movement compared to any part else in the body, because we need that to happen all the time. So that's why the time needed for the muscle to reach the peak action is less. And at the same time, the relaxation time is also less. So this all helps the muscle in its function.
So that we can use our eyes to follow something that's moving very fast, and the eye will immediately respond.
Absolutely correct. Yes.
SubhanAllah.
Now, this video here will show us a movement. Let's look at this movement here. This movement is very quick, right? And this movement is going from the central part of the eye to the side. You try it yourself, move your eyes quickly from side to side. You can, for example, make your fist to one side and then a finger in the middle, and start moving your eye from the fist to the finger very quickly. That's what we call the Circades, or the fast eye movement. This is the first type of the eye movements we have. So we have now the eyes. We knew how the muscles are acting and what are the function of the muscles and how it works on the eye. Now we look into the types of the movement that the eye works in. Let's start again. So this quick movement from the central part to the side is what we call the saccades, or the very quick movement. The range of this quick movement is 300 to 700 degrees per second. So the eye can move as quickly as 300 degrees or 700 degrees to the maximum in 1 second. That's how quickly the eye can move. This movement can be achieved instantaneously as you have the object you would like, object of interest you would like to look at, or maybe something coming suddenly into the field of vision, something that drops in front of you, something attracts your attention, your brain sometimes involuntarily moves to that. This quick movement, which we call the saccades, is very quick, 300 to 700 degrees per second.
Wow. So that you can immediately understand what's happening, and maybe you'll then need to take an action with another muscle like your hand or leg, or defend yourself or something.
Exactly. Now, there was a scientist in 1961. His name was Pritchard. Now, the saccades that we discussed is the quick movement that happens to fixate, to move the eye from the central or from the primary gaze or the front looking into the extreme periphery very quickly, to bring the object that you want to see back into where your eyes is. So in a way, you want to move your eyes quickly to look at something. There is another type, which is a more common one. It's called the microsaccades. And this microsaccades will be, even we will look at it later, but the microsaccades is something that happens all the time. Now, even if your eyes are not moving extremely to that gaze very quickly, the microsaccades is happening all the time. The frequency of this microsaccades is about 2 to 3 per second. So in other way, they say that this is the quickest physiological regular movement happens in your body, even more than your heart beats. So in other words, this is what's happening all the time, 2 to 3 times per second. Your eyes moves very, very gradually, very small frequency, but it is a very quick one as well. It is 1 second of one degree, like a very small movement, and it's happening all the time. Now, Pritchard said in his theory to start with that
why is it doing that?
Why he's doing that? This is something he saw that this is imperfection, because what he was saying is we have imperfection in our eyes. The eye is moving all the time, and this makes our fixation doesn't happen. Or in other words, if we keep the eye fixed, if we reach to the fixed position, we can have what he called supervision. So he made this experiment. He was trying to prove his theory that if I get the eye to fix without any microsaccades, without these imperfections, then, or according to him is imperfection, that I will get supervision. So he did this experience. He got an image, and this image goes through a lens, and he had a projector, and at the same time he had a contact lens attached to the eye. Now the idea was to move the eye, move the image with each side, with each time the eye moves. So he is actually not he cannot control the eye movement, but he can control the image. So what he was doing is he was moving the image with exactly the same frequency of the microsaccades in the same direction to try to find out what will be the effect on the image.
And he is measuring the eye movement through the contact lens, which is connected to the lens that is in front of the projector, so that the F on the image, the F in the image in front of us, will compensate the microsaccades. So
it will move. So in a way, it compensates the microsaccades. So in other words, he is canceling this microsaccades, or he is keeping the image falling exactly at the same point.
So from the perspective of the retina, in his mind, this will cause a sharper image on the retina, because now the image on the retina is not jittering.
Yeah, exactly. Now I have microsaccades happening all the time. If I get the image to be fixed, I will have supervision. So to his, actually what happened is that he started to notice that all the participants having the image fading, not getting sharper. So as things actually was moving, like it started to match the experience, the image starts to fade until it completely disappeared.
until it completely disappeared.
Completely disappeared. Then what did he do is actually, how about if I project a new image? I project a new image to the eye. So again, the same thing happened. The image disintegrated completely and faded until it disappeared. So he didn't achieve the super image or the supervision. Actually, he got the image to completely disappear. So the function.
Is it because, let me guess as an engineer what's happening? Is it because those microsaccades cause the light at the retina to vary, and this causes a response from the rods and cones because they feel a variation and they will essentially fire a neural reaction in this case?
Correct. That's
essentially. Yeah.
Well done. So essentially, this microsaccades, actually, the image is falling to this point. We have an involuntary other very fine movement which happens, which is ocular drift. As we are watching or looking into something, reading for a long time, we have a very small drift that happens. So first of all, this microsaccades will compensate for the involuntary small drifts. So an imperfection to correct an imperfection to get into the perfection. And the other thing is, we, as you just mentioned, our receptors, our cones, and any neural mechanism has something called adaptation. So if you keep stimulating something all the time, the signal gets less until you lose it. Because even with the best action that we have in our eyes with the cones, your adaptation starts to happen. So essentially, this microsaccades, what it does is, we have a very, very sensitive focus at the back of the eye called the fovea, or the image falls on the fovea. So the image falls on the fovea in the cone, but now you use this cone, so the pigment starts to bleach. Now you need another fresh cone to give you the best image. You will achieve this very, very fine microsaccade. You get a fresh, beautiful image without feeling anything, and you keep the image stable in a way. And at the same time, this gets the pigment to be replaced. You avoid the adaptation. The neural mechanism continues to work, and you correct for any small imperfection that happen during your continuous task.
Subhanallah, unbelievable. So it's as if, for example, there are two cones. At before the microsaccade happens, this one is receiving the image. The next 1/10 of a second, this one is receiving, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one. So each time, it's as if the cone is refreshing its adaptation and starting from the beginning, giving a new strong signal.
Correct.
So it's refreshing the pixel all the time.
Yeah.
A frame. There is a frame rate or something.
Exactly. And they were giving another example about also, you know, for the people going into the snowstorms. Sometimes they describe a snowstorm. Everything is white around them. They start having a very blurry vision. Subhanallah, this microsaccades, when you have this fresh, small, diverse image, you are getting this mild diversity or mild diversification of your stimulus will make your vision more precise. In other words, if you have the stimulus exactly the same all over the eye, you won't be able to see at all. That's what happened to people going into a storm and in the snowstorm. They start having a very, very blurry vision when everything around them is white. So
and yeah, because even with the microsaccades, it's only white all over the place. So
exactly.
they will the fading will start happening, and you cannot see anything. It's black.
Exactly right. Yes. Yeah.
So maybe they need to do like this and then open or something in front of their eyes.
Yeah.
I have a funny comment here from one of the viewers. His name is Higher Frequency. He says, "Are you sure this isn't a blind Darwinian process that naturally occurs over time? Maybe some aliens gave us supervision. God help us all." So he's obviously sarcastic to the Darwinian method of thinking.
Yeah.
And really, Dr. Ahmed, when I'm now thinking of this is completely unbelievable, because natural selection or random mutation can never, ever in zillion years, this is something that has a designer who is all wise. He is at utmost awareness of the limitations of the physical world, and he is putting all the compensation mechanisms. So we are at الذي أحسن كل شيء خلقه. Yeah, so it's everything is perfected so that compensation is done exactly as needed. You need muscles that are very sensitive. You have the muscles that are very sensitive. You have control at the fiber level. You have very fast muscles. You have very thin muscles. You have all the number of muscles that you need to make all the motions. And then you have an amazing refresh rate of those unbelievable elements, which are the cones and maybe even the rods, and everything is calculated. So subhanallah,
in a very, very precise way, in a very precise way, to the degree of, as we milliseconds and milli degrees of things, and it moves simultaneously, both eyes at the same time. And we didn't even yet discuss how it is all controlled in the brain. So this is still at the eye level. So you can imagine the very, very complex process behind everything, and you will never be able to even think, as you mentioned, in zillion years that this can happen by just a chance.
Yes, and it explains why both doctors and engineers, again, will never accept this nonsense of evolution.
Right. And I wish all the others as well. Inshallah, everybody will be convinced.
Actually, when someone is an atheist, it's not his mind that is working anymore. It is denial, and denial denial obscures the mind. Absolutely. All right, let's go ahead with this marvelous presentation. Okay.
So here we now this is the first quick movement. We discussed the saccade, and the saccade is a very quick movement. Now there is another type of movement called the pursuit movement, or the pursuit movement, which means that you want to track the object. Now your eyes moved very quickly to get something into your interest, out of into the field of vision. Now it is of interest for you, so you'd like to keep watching it. But you would like to keep watching it and at the same time fixing it with the same speed the object moves. And that's what we call smooth pursuit movement. It is around the range between 20 to 50 degrees per second. And we can see the gentleman here in the video. He can follow the pen with his eyes, and he can follow it precisely with the same speed as the examiner is moving his pen. So he doesn't fall behind. He's just tracking it very accurately with his eyes in all directions.
SubhanAllah, yeah.
So again, this is another video, a quick saccade happening in front of us. She saccade to the side, and then when it comes to the center, there is this kind of a small shaking movement, try to fix again the object. Now, so far we discussed movements happening in both eyes at the same time, and this we call conjugate movement. Means that both eyes move in the same direction. The beauty of things that yes, I can now move into a completely disconjugate movement, which we move the eye into a direction is opposite in both eyes. So in other words, I was moving the eye all the way to the right, and my left eye was moving to the right as well, to the left, up or down. But I want to bring something close to my eye, and I want to move the eye in the completely different direction. It's called the convergence or the vergence movement. As we can see in the image in front of us, the eye moves in, and you can try this movement yourself by bringing a pen close to your yeah, exactly. That's what we call convergence. So this is this is a very unique movement for one reason, because even if you think about all the theories of chance and that things work together, now I'm giving you a model for movement, that the model of movement, even if you try to explain it mechanically, that it works to achieve the task. Now, this task needs you to work in a completely different model, because you are activating two different sets of muscles which were supposed to work against each other, not together. But this time we are working together. And I'm getting the muscles needed for that to work together through a different neural mechanism. And each time we do that, we need a single, another center within the brain to send another impulse. And this impulse goes to exactly the same fibers, but these fibers this time will react in a different way.
Subhanallah. So
now,
so
this
the
muscle,
design also has alternate paths of
correct,
producing different mechanisms of coordination. So instead of the opposite muscles acting together, now the same muscles act together.
Yeah, exactly. The same muscles acting together to bring the eye in close to each other, which is the medial rectus, or the inner muscle that we saw at the front of the first few videos. The two muscles now are acting together. The medial rectus was supposed to be working with the lateral rectus of the other eye, but now the medial rectus is working with the sister medial rectus of the other eye to bring both eyes close together to the middle. And then we can see close object, or we can see a near object. And this kind of movement is disconjugate. And if even when try to look into the neural model, I don't think they try to achieve 100% how this neural model works, because it is a very complex one. Again, we need a coordinating center to be working to send impulse to muscles in both eyes. But this time, the muscle that we were using to move with the other muscle, or the opposite on the other eye, we are telling it now to move with the same muscle to achieve a completely different movement this time. So this is a very complex model, but it still happens, which is, we call it the convergence, or the eye moves together. And this movement happens when we read or we look at something near to us. We need the eye to move together to be able to look at the near object, and that's what we call convergence. This is the third type of the movement that we have in our eyes.
Wow.
Now, this is the convergence of the eye. This image maybe in the middle here will show us the eye moves, the axis of the eye moves to be close to each other, so we can look at the near object, or we can read the without any problem, with comfort. And at the same time, if we remember from the previous episode that we said something called accommodation. So this is a reaction that happens at the same time, or what we call it a reflex. In the medical terms, we call it a reflex, or in other words, it's a near reflex. So anything comes closer to your eyes converge, it comes close to each other, and your eyes starts to do the accommodation at the same time. So it is a reflex. It is many things happening at the same time, so you can achieve your near vision comfortably without a problem.
Yeah. So this motion of convergence toward the middle actually is not damaging any muscles. It is actually a natural, because I always thought that people who do this on purpose are damaging their eye muscles. But
no,
what you're saying,
and if you keep doing it, there is a near point beyond which your eyes will break again. So let's do, if you can try this at yourself, or maybe your children. If you do that, and then you bring it closer and closer and closer, at a certain point you won't be able to see beyond which, and then the eye starts to break, and that's what we call the near point. Each one has its own near point.
Okay, so beyond this is the maximum that they can come together, and then they
breaks.
Is it a protection mechanism, or what is it?
It is a stimulus. So in other words, so long that it is focused in your eyes, you bring it together. But at a certain point, your near point, which is the nearer focal point of your lens, you remember from the last episode that the lens has a near point. The near point differs according to how strong is your eye. But for the average person, the near point is about 30 centimeters. I can read comfortably without glasses at 30 centimeters. This is my near point. If I go beyond the near point, it is blurry, starts to become blurry. So the blurry will be immediately, the reflex will start to break, because there is now the purpose of the reflex is not there anymore.
Yeah, do you know, I have a cat, and subhanallah, cats, I learned that they are almost blind for very close things, because they are hunters and they need to run after things, fast things. So their vision is more strong for the far field.
Yeah.
And then I learned something that, the whiskers, they have the whiskers.
Yeah.
And when things are very close to them, like they want to lick milk, or to after they have hunted the prey, it's very close to them. the whiskers act like eyes. So through the whiskers, the whiskers coming out of their face.
Yeah.
And even there are things like whiskers in their paws. So the whiskers in their forward paws and back paws, and the whiskers on their face, they somehow, their brain uses them to understand what is nearer to them. So even if so for us, if the pen is very close, we have intelligence, we can do things, we can act or something. But for them, the whiskers will do the trick. So subhanallah, unbelievable design, subhanallah. And that's why cats can go in very dark places at the night and there is no light and they cannot see anyway, but they can still navigate. And you wonder how come the cat does not hit things and very close things, and they react very, very fast when there is something close to them. And this is because they can see with the whiskers. That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. All right, so let's go ahead with the eyes. And yeah.
Now, this is a simple slide. I want each of us now to look at the red dot in the middle of the slide. Keep looking at the red dot.
Okay, I'm looking.
Keep looking again. Now, do you have any problem fixing the red dot at the middle of the screen? If you want to keep looking at this dot for an hour from now, will you have any problem?
I don't think so. I can still see the red dot.
You can keep looking at it. So you can maintain a position for hours. You can read a book for hours and hours without a problem, isn't it? So your muscle, your eyes are actually moving all the time to different directions in a very speedy way. It acts in a very precise way. But if you want your eyes to remain still for you to perform a function and give you a stable, constant vision, you will achieve it very easily without a problem. And you will not see this moving.
Absolutely. Yes.
So the constant vision or the stable vision can be achieved. And this is actually the tonic part of the muscle that we have. And this is a very, very important part of the extraocular muscles or the muscles around the eye. So the muscles doesn't get fatigued. It doesn't let you down after looking all the time. Now, if you think about your eyes as an organ that works from the time you wake up in the morning until you go to bed at night, it did all that, and it is looking everywhere, up and down, right and left, looking into whoever is speaking to you, walking down the street. But when you needed to look at your computer or your laptop or your book for studying, it will work hours and hours without any tiredness or any problem. It will keep working and looking and giving you a constant image. That's what we call maintaining the image stable. And by the way, it is not a negative or inactive process. It is an active process. We just spoke about the microsaccades. Now, the microsaccades, as we mentioned, it will give you a fresh image without adaptation. It will correct any imperfection that will happen, so you can look into stable object. If you look into the sky sometimes at night, you might look at the star and you start seeing the star moving. And this star moving is a kind of illusion happens because the distance of the image, and at the same time we have compensatory movement within the muscles around the eye. Now, if the muscles starts to move and the eye will compensate for a movement, that it will give you the stable image still. So in other words, you can track things into this. You can track things, and the image for you is still stable. It's not moving.
Yeah.
So you can follow a moving object, but your eye, the image for you is still stable. And this is not an easy process. And maybe for engineer, they understand tracking devices and things like that, and how they can match the speed with accuracy. So this is something that's very complex. And again, it happens and it can change quickly without the need for any different neural mechanism. So this or different electric system or feeding system to the mechanics of it. And this is still happening within the eye.
Yes, I get what you're saying. And this is when we're doing tracking, we need special circuitry to lock on something and continue having a feedback loop, a negative feedback loop, so that you will always calculate the difference between the new position and the desired position, and then you will compensate, for example, to keep a radio signal focused, or to keep an object at the right part of the retina in this case, etc. So it's absolutely.
We have that. So this constant is still constant M. Now, all what we discussed is still, this is the brain. We're looking into inside the brain. We can see two small round parts within the brain here called the superior colliculus. And this is small, a very small part of the brain is responsible to a big degree of all what we discussed about the movement so far. It's a very integral part for that. And this has what we call a retinotopic map for the images around us. You can see that each of the superior colliculi is connected to an eye, and there is a crossing happening. You can see the three arrows here, and this is represented in the superior colliculus in the left side, and on the opposite side, the left side is represented on the right side, and this works together to give you the range of movement that we need. Now, it's not only that. There's also maybe the slide is not it made toward the end, but I will show it later on. We see the image within this small round parts in the eye. We see the dimensions of things into different parts sees different things. So we see things in 3 dimensions. Sometimes we see things into we perceive depth, as we will see right now, into transparent things. We see depth to it. We see things which are not straight to the it is not in line, so we see the side of it and we can decide whether it is oblique or straight. So all these things has different parts within this small round part to give you the best vision you can have. Now, we already discussed now the motor system, optical image we achieved. There is a motor system to work with the optical system, the types of movement that the eye can do to bring the image or the object of interest to your eyes, to track it, to get it in focus all the time. Now, we want to see all what we get now as 3 dimensions. So this is the goal. This is essentially what we were trying to
Absolutely.
Yes, we want to see things 3 dimensions. Now, the 3D thing, seeing 3D is not a luxury for the human being, because without being in a 3D life, you won't be able to appreciate any of your universe in a way that keeps you safe. First important thing, that actually gives you the ability to even move and start doing your function in life. Take a simple task that you are driving down the street and you're not able to tell if the car far from you or it is near. How much is it the distance between you and the car in the street while you're driving? What is coming close to you and what is far? It's all 2-dimensional world we are living in. And imagine that happening. Even a simple task, getting upstairs, downstairs, anything like very small tasks that we do every day in our life, to the very complex tasks like performing surgery or doing something in construction, all this 3D things, without having the ability to navigate in 3Ds. 3D will come into 2 different ways. Our body is prepared in a way to look into 3D by things that we learn how to do it, and things that we are born with. So the monocular cues means that we can see 3D with one eye through the cues that we can find. In other words, you don't need both eyes working together to tell that there is a depth here. You can still use one eye, but you are able to tell there is a depth. First of them is maybe simple for the engineers, simple for other people who studied art or they knew some about the perspective. But the linear perspective, it is one of the most powerful monocular cues. In other words, parallel lines pointed directly away from us, and they get closer as we go further in the space. So if you look into the rail tracks,
and that's how you can sometimes play optical illusions on somebody by giving the brain what the brain
exactly.
uses for 3D vision. Yeah.
Yeah, linear perspective. The lines meet at the horizon when there
Yes.
is actually wherever you look into the perspective, what we call the linear perspective.
Yeah.
This is an example of the linear perspective here. You can see the perspective. You can walking through the corridor. You can tell that this corridor has a depth to it, and as you look at the image, you can tell that at the far end of the corridor there is a small door, and on the sides there are different doors. These doors are not at the same level. The bigger one is closer to you, and as you go down the corridor, it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And by the size of it and the shape, you can tell there is a depth to it.
This is the work of the brain.
This is the work of the. I think this is more to do with the way you are educated and how the things are around you in life. This is something
Okay.
we acquire through
We
our
learn.
training and education and things like that.
Okay.
This is the aerial perspective. The aerial perspective is when you look at far objects, it has a blue tinge and it gets fader. So if you look at the mountains at the background of this picture, it has a blue tinge, and it is not as clear or as in focus at the one at the front. So again, your brain will tell you that this is an aerial perspective, and this aerial perspective means that the mountains at the back of the image are actually in deep, much deeper than the one at the front. So there is depth to this image as well. And this is still monocular cues. It is not binocular or not caused by both eyes.
All
Now,
right.
there is another monocular cue, which is called the parallax, motion parallax. And motion parallax means that things which, if you move side to side, things which are closer to you will move faster, and things which are further away from you will move slower. If we look at the image here, we are moving the image side to side. Look at the tree and look at the birds. Or the tree will look as if it is moving much quicker side to side, but the things further away from you will look slower. So this is parallax motion. This is another monocular cue.
Things that are
Further away from you will move slower.
Will move slower. Yes, absolutely.
And
yes.
things that are closer to you will move quicker. It will be quicker. It appears quicker to you. So
yeah. Do you know that parallax is used to estimate the distance of cosmic objects? This is just an extra
I didn't know
information.
that.
Yeah.
This is something
So
new for me. So
engineers actually use parallax, so you know that one specific object in outer space is at that much distance from Earth, and then by comparing the apparent speed of its movement, when you start doing this kind of thing, compared to the one that you know its distance, you can estimate the distance of the farthest star or the farthest planet, etc. So parallax is actually used in.
So this is something really good to know as well.
Yeah.
So we were discussing accommodation now. Now, the brain is. We were just saying the accommodation. Let's see the accommodation movement in action. We were discussing now accommodation just a few minutes ago, that the eye, when things come closer, will start to accommodate, or the lens moving thickness, changing thickness to accommodate for the image. You can see the lens here increasing in thickness, and this makes the lens more powerful. This is a reaction we just discussed a few minutes ago, associated with the being things close to the eye or near to the eye. So the lens becomes thicker, and when the lens becomes thicker, we bring things close, which are close to the eye, into focus.
And those things are really very tiny, like muscles inside the eye itself. You know, those are the
inside
muscles
the eye itself, and this muscle around the eye, which support the lens in place. These are small ligaments here, and the ligaments connect to the lens into the muscle, and the muscle contracts, so the lens increases in thickness here. And when this happens, the accommodation reflex happens.
Those,
Now,
those muscles are all around 360 degrees around the lens, right?
correct. It is a circle around the lens.
They can do like this and like that, right?
They contract. When they contract, they become smaller. So the circle becomes smaller. So the muscle, the ligaments becomes relaxed. So the muscles increase, the lens increase in thickness. So the contraction brings the muscle smaller in size, the actual circle. That's how it works, the ciliary muscle, or the muscle responsible for the accommodation. Now, we are speaking about accommodation here because the brain, our brain is very clever in a way that it understands if accommodation happens, this means that the object is close to the eye. But if accommodation doesn't happen, this means that the object is far from me. So this is another clue for the brain that this is close or far.
Wow. So the brain, so the brain actually is what initiates the accommodation through like a kind of reflex.
Yes.
And then it sees if the accommodation causes a better visibility for the object, and then it can guess then if it's really closer or farther. So the reflex and cognition are working together in like a feedback loop.
Correct. Yeah. So this happens, then this object is close to the eye, not far from the eye.
SubhanAllah.
Now, we are living a very beautiful life around us. The universe is beautiful, and it is all in light and shadow. And this light and shadow is very important for our perception of depth. Let's watch this a small, short movie about light and shadow. So just the light and shadow, as I wanted to show you, and I'm sure all of us will appreciate the beauty of the world around us, subhanallah, by creating the sun and the moon, and the sun giving us the light that we need in our life every day. It is an essential part to appreciate the depth. So without knowing where the light source is, without having a light in the universe around us, you will never be able to tell the depth. So the light and shadow are essential part of our perception of depth around us. And this cannot happen without having a source of light, which is the sun. So the sun is created, and I was listening to one of the art lectures recently, and the lecturer was saying, in order to be able to do any artwork, you have to have a source of light. Without a source of light, you will never be able to create an art or any image or any piece of work, because the light is the essential part for you, first of all, to appreciate the depth, the shape, to create the shape with your lines. So that's another very important cue for our perception of the depth. And this is, subhanAllah, something we have every day, with the different grades of shades, with the different colors, with the different angles of the light. This is happening around us all the time. Sometimes we don't feel it that much, but this is really, really important for achieving the depth perception as a monocular cue was one eye.
Appreciated. All right.
Now, this what we discussed so far with the monocular cues for the perception of depth. Now we come for the eyes to work together, as we maybe discussed at the first slide. There are single line in the space, and this line in the space connects all the points which falls in the two corresponding points on the retina. For us to see the image as a single, look at the star in the middle. The star in the middle, the image is falling at the corresponding retinal point. So this point here is corresponding to the point here, and the brain will get the signal from the 2 points and interpret it as a single image. The line here is the line where the points will fall on it. So this line here will have, if the point is here, for example, the image will fall on this side, and on the other side it will fall here, and then we will get a single image. That's what we call a horopter, or this is the line in the space which connects us all together. Now, this horopter is not a simple line. The actual horopter, or the area around it, is called Panam's area. This area is all the area where we can achieve stereopthesis. What stereopsis means that what we can see things in 3D. So seeing things as a stereo or stereopsis means that we're able to appreciate the things into depth. We appreciate the three-dimensional thing. Now, that's the first image showed us the area where we can see things as one depth, or an object with depth. Now, it is not only that, it is the binocular disparity, or a little bit misalignment that happens between both eyes with the angle of seeing things, that will give us the option to compose the two images into a single image with depth. Let's look at this image here. This eye looks at these two images from this angle here, and this is a perception of the image from this eye. Now, if we look into exactly the same two objects from the different angle with the left eye, that's how the left eye is seeing the two objects.
Yes.
Now, if we put the two together, we will see the two together sometimes somewhere in between the two, but we will see it in a depth, with a depth perception. So, in other words, we need some disparity in the angle of vision to be able to achieve the depth into seeing things.
And is it the brain that makes the math?
It is the brain which makes the math, and it is the part of the brain that we just had a look at it now. It is the cognitive areas. It is a very complex process, but it is connecting all the motor parts within the brain to the visual part of the brain, which is the visual cortex, to make a meaning and depth to the things that we see. So here, I was saying about how we look into things. Now, this is the, let's say, look at the image here. This is object Q and object P, and there is disparity between the two images. If we look into with this eye, the right eye, the image of P will fall in here, and the image of Q will fall in here. And if we look from the other angle with the left eye, it will be a different. It will be some disparity.
The separation is bigger.
Exactly. The difference between where the image falls in both eyes. Look at the separation here. Exactly, separation here is smaller. Separation here is bigger. This is called absolute disparity between the two eyes. There is also the relative disparity between the two eyes. The difference between the angle, which is in this eye, the alpha, and the beta, and the difference between the two angles is called the relative disparity of the image to the eye. Now, the eye can see things into different shapes. For example, the A and B is the shape in 3 dimensions, or in other words, the shape has the image has an actual shape. It is a cube. It is a cylinder. It is something with 3 dimensions. So that's the first 2 images, A and B. Now we can see that the C is an oblique image, and it has a part of it is closer to the eye and part is further away from the eye. You can still tell that this is an oblique image. Image D is an image where this is a transparent. So let's say there is a glass, and the bottom to the glass, you can see within the transparent image a depth into it. You can see the things rotating, or you can see even sinusoidal variation. You can see like patterns, and you can see this patterns into depth. So different parts of the brain will interpret different parts of the depth perception. So the part of the brain, of this part of the brain, which is what we call it ventral, or the closer part to the front, is perceiving the depth, the 3-dimensional thing, and the dorsal part, or the posterior part, will interpret the other parts, the other images, C, D, E, and F. But all this, again, will working together in a very complex way. Until now, even with the most recent kind of research into this area, they cannot locate exactly where the signal is interpreted when it comes to the depth or to the shape, but they can roughly say that this part of the brain gets more stimulated when you look into such images, or this part of the brain will be firing more, the nerve will be firing more. So they're just giving them a clue that this part gets more activated, but they cannot locate specifically where exactly the nerve fibers are responsible for that. It is a very complex cognitive process, and I think this is a big area for research, is still ongoing. But again, we're still able to see things into depth, like right now. So again, this is the binocular disparity. The binocular disparity in an image. Let's say that you are looking at this policeman, and the policeman is closer to you, and the tree is further away from you. There is disparity happening, and the things closer to you makes crossed. So if you look into the object here, the line from the policeman is crossing the other line from the tree. If things are coming closer to you, causing what we call cross disparity. So yes, it crosses the optical axis, and it causes the image. That's how we feel that things are closer. This is more close to us by this cross disparity. If it is further, it is not causing this cross disparity. Now, this is another test. If you put the image away from you, and if you put the screen slightly away from you, and hold your pen at your arm length and fixate the spot at the same time, and try to look with one eye at a time, you will be able to see the difference that you perceive between both eyes. If you can do the test now, wink with one eye at a time while you are fixating the red dot, you'll be able to see. Yeah, you'll see that each eye sees something different. But when you open both eyes, you will see completely different image, which is your 3D image.
Yeah, it's very funny. All right.
They looking into the how soon we get our depth perception. They were saying that it is something we are born with, and you don't need to get trained to get depth perception. So there was a nice experience called the visual cliff experience, and this happened, I think, in 1960 something. As you can see, the video here is very old. Essentially, what they did is they took children at the age of 6 months. They just crawling, and they with their mothers, and they put them on a cliff. And this cliff, as you can see in the image here, this is actually a perplex, what do you call it? Periplex glass, which is strong enough to withstand their weight, but it's transparent, so they can see the checkered pattern of the cover, and they can. If you look at it, you will perceive it as if you will fall down. If you look at the image to the child here, if the child look at it, he will perceive as if there is nothing here, and he will fall down. And interestingly, as we can see the experience here, maybe you will show the video. So they got.
As soon as a baby can move about, he can be observed in the same way as other animals. This is what the baby sees when he is placed on the center platform and looks at the far side. Mother stands opposite him, twirling a toy, and beckoning to him.
So the mother is trying to attract him to her side through the glass, and she's trying to get them to move, but they don't move. They're completely afraid of the cliff. But if the mother comes to the other side, playing with the same toy, they will move to her. Now, they said that this is something they get trained to appreciate, and they can appreciate the tone in the mother. When she gets worried about them, they stop. But this is not true, because they said even as young as 3 months, you can appreciate the depth. So she's playing with the toy again and trying to attract them to come to her side, but they don't. They stop. They are falling on the cliff.
Almost all of the babies went to their mothers at the near side.
Wow.
On the other side, they will go and without any problem.
Yes. So it is actually functionality that we are born with.
Exactly.
Not really trained to understand.
Yes. So this is what this experiment will show us, that we are born with the appreciation of depth, and this is kind of a protective mechanism we are born with, subhanallah, so we can navigate safely without a problem, without being endangered.
Subhanallah.
So I think that was the depth perception and seeing the world in 3D. I just wanted to, before we close, and this ayah here, when I was reading it, if you can look into read it and look into the meaning of it. وإذ نطقنا الجبل فقام كأنه ظلة وظنوا أنه واقع بهم أخذوا ما آتيناكم بقوة واذكروا ما فيه لعلكم تتقون. And when we shook the mountain above them as if it were a canopy, and they supposed it was about to fall upon them, and we said, hold fast to that which you have been given, and remember what is in it, so that you may fear Allah. This is a pure kind of a descriptive, a very nice visual picture. You can see that the mountain is moving in a way, and they can see it in a different way. Of course, they had the depth perception. They were able to appreciate that the mountain is moving in a way that it is now like a canopy over them. It is about to fall down on them, and the order is coming close to take what you hold fast to what you were given. وَاذْكُرُوا مَا فِيهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, and fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the other descriptive, very nice picture as well. لكن الذين اتقوا ربهم لهم غرف من فوقها غرف مبنية تجري من تحتها الأنهار وعد الله لا يخلف الله الميعاد. But for those who keep their duty to their Lord, for them mansions above lofty mansions, beneath which streams flow. This is a promise of Allah. Allah doesn't fail his promise. So you can imagine rooms or mansions above mansions, like these palaces in the in Jannah, and rivers run under the palaces, and this is all in a beautiful three-dimensional. It's not a like bi-dimensional world. It's not a plain world. We are living in a very, very beautiful world in 3 dimensions. And the descriptive terms for the Quran, subhanAllah, is very clear about that.
SubhanAllah, that was Dr. Ahmed. That was a fascinating presentation. I think that whoever goes through all 3 parts can only stand in awe to God's creation and this marvelously designed and very detailed design of the whole thing. I have one comment or one question to you. We did not go through the physiology or architecture of the small electronic parts on the retina, the rods and
no,
cones,
we didn't discuss color. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe I will be greedy and ask you to make a 4th installment about the color vision and how the rods and how the sensation of light and how the sensation of color works, and what are the mechanisms that cause us to see colors and that cause some animals to see black. Yeah, wow, 10 million colors.
Yes.
That's plenty of colors. So we can make a difference between one color and the next one, and they are only one over 10 million apart.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think I will be greedy and I will ask you to teach us something about this.
Yeah,
maybe in a
I learned a lot through this, subhanAllah. So this is all going to into the beauty of the creation and to the basic science. And every time you start reading about something, you'll be surprised on how much research went into these areas. And that's essentially a very, very nice learning process. If you start in each part of what we discussed, each even slide, if you take it and you start searching it up or you start looking into it, you will find a completely new, different perspective that you can follow. And you can spend a lot of time reading and you get fascinated more and more and more. Of course, time is usually short. I've tried to make it more constructive in a way that you understand the whole process and what takes the optical system into achieve things. But as I just mentioned, it is a very complex process, even for the people who are specialized in the field. You need sometimes a pure scientist to just explain to you what is this fact and how he managed to even understand or detangle the process behind it. Because we all the time hear about people getting Nobel Prizes for new discoveries in research or science, and this is still happening all the time. And when they do that, most of the time they are working at this very, very microcellular level, or this very, very specific mechanism within the brain. So you can imagine we are speaking about as we started, about a single organ within the body. The 2 organs work together, and despite that, we are not able to cover even a very, very small part of the beauty of the creation and how it functions. So I think for anybody listening to that, essentially all what we're trying to say, that this creation can never be matched. Nobody will be able by any means even put things together in a fraction of things like that. The whole process, the whole idea of that is for you to look it up, think about it more, and if you try to find a rift, that's fine. If you try it again and again and again, find it, and then let us know. This will be very helpful for us to follow you and maybe discuss it further with you as well.
Like the person who wanted to make a better design so that the the flicker and the result was that there is no vision. There is no vision at all. I have 2 comments.
And every time, by the way, every time someone is trying to work in a way, we have also something called the aberrations, the optical aberrations of the eye. And now with the new refractive surgery, they are trying to kind of eliminate all the aberrations. But by the way, creating this very, very supervision sometimes it's never works. It's even worse. And most of the patients go through that they end up in a way that is not very satisfactory to them. So that's good. We are not saying that this is bad. Actually, it is the best thing to do is to try to find it and research it further and try to find a way through it. And this, if anything, will guide you more to the fact that this creation can never be matched. This creation is something that created with a very, very precise perfection to serve the function and to lead through the life with all the difficulties, with all the challenges, take you through that and make you even believe more that this is nothing can be compared to that within your own body and within your own world every single day.
Absolutely, subhanAllah. I have a couple of comments that some of the audience have put. One says, subhanAllah, look how these muscles transition to transparent. And I think we discussed that when we were looking at the anatomy. It's completely mind-blowing. And the other one says, so the socket is not circular.
No, it's not. It's pyramid shaped.
Yeah, and that's actually, I replied to him, says, because you need space for the muscles and they need to be linearly stretched. I hope I did answer correctly. So
the space is there and the muscle is stretched and the muscle is in a certain axis and the field of action is very precisely created to move, as we mentioned, in a very, very fine grades across the whole circle, circle around you, across the world. And you can navigate the world safely, looking front, looking steady, not shaking, and not hesitating to look around you.
Dr. Ahmed, this was marvelous. And alhamdulillah, we'll have a fourth installment to talk about the retina and the elements on it so we understand how we can see the shades of light and how we can see the colors. And thank you very, very much for this. Jazakallah khairan, inshallah. And may we all meet in Jannah and enjoy the ghuraf that are on top of each other. And tajri min tahtiha al-anhar, inshallah. So for everyone who has seen this, thank you very much for being here. Please share it. And if you are going to see it later as recorded, please also share it to your loved ones. And I leave you with this beautiful thought of how this world around us is so beautiful, but the world that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for those who have been pious in this world is even more beautiful. Thank you once again, Dr. Ahmed, and see you in the fourth installment, inshallah. And I'll be putting the extra. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, shada la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wal 'asri innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa 'amilus salihati wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr.